Surely every person has had moments in their life when they regretted something. I'm sure each of you has experienced this as well. But regret about the past is a part of our life. Although I say all day long that happiness is destroyed by three things. These are regret about the past, ingratitude for the present, and worry about the future. But at the same time, when I speak about this, I speak about constant regret. If you have constant regret, then it destroys your happiness. But occasional regret happens to each of you. And the same happened to me. And now, looking back, if theoretically I had the opportunity to go back or talk to my 20-year-old or 25-year-old self, what would I recommend to myself? Let's talk about this today. The first thing I would, of course, talk about with my 20-year-old or 25-year-old self is the value of attention. Unfortunately, in youth this happens not only to me, it happens to all young people in general. Young people do not really value the importance of their attention, so they scatter their attention on parties, on social networks, on various types of activities, on reading a huge amount of literature, watching videos, audio, and so on. But this is probably a characteristic of all young people in general. Young people overflow with energy, they have a lot of energy, they do everything at once, they rush into everything, they try to find their place in life, they try to find a topic on which they can build a business, they try to understand where they could become professionals and where they could become the best in their field. Therefore, as a rule, all young people have one basic problem. It is the huge scattering of attention across a huge number of activities. In general, the ability to manage attention is one of the fundamental abilities or skills of a person. Therefore, from a young age, I would pay attention to this. Unfortunately, in my youth, I did not know the power of attention. I did not know that attention has such a power that whatever I focus on begins to grow. I did not know this iron connection, that everything I pay attention to grows. And the second connection is that any problem is solved when you pay attention to it. Any problem is, in essence, a signal that is sent to you demanding your attention, that a problem signals to you. Pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. If you do not pay attention to the problem will worsen. It will become bigger and bigger and bigger until you reach a situation where you can no longer avoid paying attention to it.so at the first signs of problem. Always put everything aside. Direct all your attention to the problem and keep your attention on it until the problem is solved. And if you want to grow in something, determine what exactly you want to grow in and direct all your attention only there. And that will grow. And this applies to relationships with other people, and it applies to any activity of yours and improvement in any field. The second thing I want to talk about with my younger self is the value and importance of purposeful self-development. Look, there's a large number of people who do not engage in self-development at all. These are the people who, I believe, have put a cross on their life, who are already disappointed, have given up, or maybe do not even realize the value and importance of self-development. There's another half of people who do engage in self-development, and mostly this is a characteristic of young people. Constantly developing in something, searching for something, studying something, and so on. But the problem here lies not in self-development itself. The problem here is that young people do not have purposeful self-development. That I myself had the same thing. I developed in all fields and many fields. I believe that the more I knew, the better. I read a lot of books. As a result, of course, I became an erudite person. I could solve crosswords quite well, but did not help my life that much. So the understanding of the importance and value of purposeful self-development is a very important and powerful insight. What is purposeful self-development? It is when you first set a goal, and then you develop everything that is necessary to achieve that goal. So look at how young people usually act. They develop in all areas. They think that self-development in itself has value. So I have a lecture called On the Harm of Excess Knowledge. In it, I talk exactly about this, about the lack of purposeful self-development. Therefore, self-development is valuable only if it is subordinated to and directed toward your goals. That means you should study and learn only what brings you closer to your goals. And I would also like to highlight another problem here. There's a certain category of people who get so carried away with self-development that they cannot stop. You probably know such people around you. They are commonly called eternal students. They are constantly studying, constantly learning. They always need some new certificates, diplomas, and confirmations. They cannot begin taking action. They cannot start taking the actions that lead them to their goals. They keep developing, learning something, reading something, adjusting something in themselves, and so on. I also call them pathological collectors of various competencies. But competencies are, in fact, a perishable product that if a competency is not applied immediately, it becomes outdated right away. The first major problem is when people do not engage in self-development. The second major problem is when people start self-developing and develop in all directions. The third major problem is when people start self-developing and cannot stop. So, if I had known in my youth about the value and importance of purposeful self-development directed only at achieving goals, I would have saved myself years of life and a huge amount of energy and effort by not studying things that I did not need. And by the way, be sure to write in the comments about the people around you who are at all these different stages. First, people who do not engage in self-development. Second, people who self-develop in all areas, try to be the best in everything, which is impossible. And third, write about people who cannot stop, who are constantly developing and have turned themselves into eternal students. And be sure to mention the people who develop purposefully, meaning those who develop only to the extent and in the direction necessary to achieve their goals. As a rule, this fourth category of people achieves a lot in life. The third thing I would like to talk to my younger self about is the ability to build relationships with people. I repeat many times that any success, is essentially nothing more than moving up the social ladder, the social hierarchy. Therefore, the level of success or achievement you reach in this life, whether it's business, politics, culture, art, and so on, depends entirely on how other people perceive you. That is why the ability to build relationships with other people is a super skill that requires special attention. That I would even go further and say this. I have noticed that, in general, of course not always, but generally, the difference between the rich and the poor is that poor people do not value the importance of networking or the importance of connections, while rich people clearly understand the value of connections. What is most interesting is that when wealthy people eventually achieve success, poor people typically write in the comments, "Oh, connections helped him. Of course, with those connections, he couldn't fail to succeed," and so on. But what stops you from intentionally building the right connection from the very beginning, from your youth? So the third thing I would talk to my younger self about is the ability to build purposeful connections. That is, building the connections you need to achieve your goals, plus the ability to build relationships with all the people around you, with your colleagues, your friends, your partners, your family, and so on. This is an entire science that, unfortunately, is not taught in school. That's surprising. We humans have managed to cram into schools so many subjects that we don't need in our real lives, while skills like building relationships with people, resolving conflicts, talking to others, persuading them, and expressing your thoughts with arguments, none of this is taught in school. Therefore, the ability to build relationships with other people is something I unfortunately had to learn through experience. That I made many mistakes in this area. And the third life hack or piece of advice I would give myself is to pay much more attention to the ability to build social relationships. That I generally recommend in this video that all young people join my Telegram channel. I'll leave the link below where I share these kinds of life hacks, my experience, my life, and what I would do if I were in their place. So if you're interested, click the link below and join. The fourth topic I would like to discuss with my younger self is the importance of failures and mistakes. For some reason, in our society, it is commonly believed that failures and mistakes have a negative meaning. They are considered something very bad. Look, from the point of view of achieving a goal or obtaining certain benefits, failures and mistakes are of course bad. But from the point of view of self-development, failures and mistakes are the most important source of your growth and improvement. Unfortunately, from school years and throughout our upbringing, it is drilled into our heads that failures and mistakes are bad, that it is bad to be a poor student, it is bad not to know something, it is bad to make a mistake, it is bad to experience failure, and so on. But in reality, all these failures and mistakes are exactly the foundation that teaches you that I would even say they are the best teachers in your life. That I would tell my younger self. Do not be afraid of failures and mistakes. What are the consequences of this fear? The more you fear failures and mistakes, the more your activity becomes paralyzed. The direct path to your success and achievements is active action. And of course, not just active action, but active action based on strategy. By the way, I made an episode about strategy. Be sure to watch the episode about strategy. Mistakes and failures hold you back from active actions. They kind of paralyze you. Change your attitude toward mistakes and failures. Accept them as a blessing. Accept them as your teachers. In general, I've noticed in life that everything that causes us pain or discomfort ultimately benefits us. And what's most interesting is that this applies not only to mistakes and failures, it applies to everything. Truth is usually painful and uncomfortable, but it benefits us or improves us. Mistakes and failures work the same way. Even in food, look, everything that tastes bad is healthy. Everything that tastes good is either harmful or leads to gaining weight. One more thing I would emphasize when talking to my younger self about failures and mistakes is that I would warn myself against making only two types of mistakes. The first type of mistakes are repeated mistakes. And unfortunately, I also made many repeated mistakes in my life. And the second type of mistakes are mistakes with irreversible consequences. Always be careful in this regard, especially when you make a decision. Always ask yourself the question, is this a repeated mistake, or are the consequences of this decision reversible or irreversible? Therefore, when it comes to failures and mistakes, they're a blessing, except for two types of mistakes: repeated mistakes and mistakes with irreversible consequences. And the fifth thing I would like to talk about with my younger self is the earliest possible realization of your mission. Understanding why I was born. Understanding why I live. Understanding my desires, wants, fears, motivations. Understanding what I am good at and what I am bad at. Look, any effective movement in this life depends on determining the initial conditions. This is true both in mathematics and in physics. If the initial conditions are not defined, then you cannot move forward effectively. Therefore, in order to move forward effectively, you must definitely define your initial conditions. Let's take the well-known GPS coordinate system, the Global Positioning System. Each of you has a navigation map in your car. The basis of a navigation map is the GPS system, a system of satellites that performs only one function. It determines where you are located. If you don't determine where you are, you will never arrive where you want to go. Therefore, for effective and successful movement forward, you need to clearly define your initial conditions. And what are your initial conditions? They're determining what you want to do, what you are good at, what people need, and what they're willing to pay for, and what you can make money on, what drives you, what you constantly develop yourself in, and what you yourself are willing to pay for in order to do it. That is, when you define these activities, you already understand what is worth doing and what is not worth doing. And when I talk about a person's mission, many immediately think of the religious aspect. They think it's a religious part. No. In fact, realizing your mission greatly increases your efficiency because you simply cut off what you definitely don't like and what doesn't make you happier. And realizing your mission is moving from your current situation toward what makes you happier, what fills you with energy, and what gives you joy. And this is usually what you want to do and what you are good at. Therefore, the earlier you realize this, the better. Unfortunately, when I was young, I often did not do the things that brought me joy or happiness or filled me with energy. Instead, I did everything that brought me money. I believe that this was an ineffective and wrong path. Therefore, the fifth point I would discuss with my younger self is clearly defining your mission. Why you came into this world, what you want to change, what you love to do, what you are good at, what people need, and only after that, which of these things you can make money from.